And looks like we're live. Let me just do the mandatory tweeting so people can chime in.
Mm-hmm.
And then as people trickle in, we can get started. Let's check online. I can see myself, so that's good. All right. Welcome everyone. This week was all about AI week. We are actually in the middle of it. So some blog posts and content went already out on Monday, some of it today, some of it tomorrow, and some is coming Thursday as well. So we just wanted to kind of like take a break in the middle of the week and talk a bit all about AI, why it's relevant for us at the next. And today I have with me Victor Savkin, which is the CTO and co-founder of NX. So
Hello,
hi,
everyone.
Victor.
Hey, Juri.
How are you doing?
Yeah, it's intense week. See, I didn't have time to shave, right? So it's, for days because it's just been it's been intense.
It definitely has been 100%.
For you, much longer, based on how long you're here. It's been intense for years.
Yeah, but I had the time to get a haircut today morning just for the live show, so there was still some space here and there. So it's good. It's good. It's fine. All right. So while people chime in, we can get the discussion going. And to get started, basically, I wanted to be a bit like hear your opinion and like what do you think about the whole AI space, how it has shaped the whole developer tooling market, especially because like we are basically NX
Right.
is a developer tool, right? Let's just dive into that and explore what has happened so far.
Yeah, it's interesting how quickly it changed from being what I thought was a gimmick, the auto completion part, kind of useful but not that impactful, right? To being something that everyone I know is either using heavily or is exploring, to use heavily, right? I think it's a big deal. What I find interesting as well is that you kind of see the bifurcation of people I talk with, at least into two groups. One is folks who are kind of indie hackers, small, like work on small projects by themselves with very small teams, right? And people who work on like bigger systems, including ourselves. Like we at NX work we don't have a massive team, but it's a sizable team, and it's a distributed system, so it's very complex, right? What we are shipping, right? It's not like a web app, right? So you see this bifurcation, but the first group sees a lot more value out of it, and they could say, "Oh, Cloud Code just does it for me," or whatever, right? And it's like there's a lot of value in there, right? And the second group has to work a lot harder to see some value, right? And I think we see a lot more value than a lot of enterprise teams see, and because we do a few things differently. But that bifurcation is already interesting. So see what is so hard about an enterprise system where that value isn't there or not as big. That's kind of one point we can discuss. And the second point, which I thought is interesting in general, is that we have a much stronger emphasis on creating code, right? And we're like, okay, we can create code and twice as fast, which I don't. For the first group, it's probably true. For the second group, it's not true. But let's even imagine it could be true for the second group. It can generate twice as many PRs, right, per week, in theory at some point, right? Work in a big system. The question is like, does it matter? Are you going to hit some sort of roadblock? Is your bottleneck is actually generating PRs, right? Or there is a different bottleneck that you spend most of your time doing something else, not authoring code, right? And for the second group, it's definitely the case, right? Is to see like, okay, how do we do that? It's like saying I brush my teeth, 5 minutes a day, 2.5 minutes in the morning, like in the evening, most days, and I can make it 10 times like more efficient. But it doesn't give me so much leverage throughout my day if most of my day is doing something else, right? If anyone who works with a big organization knows that authoring code is not the bulk of your time. It's a small part of your time. Most of your time you're doing something else, right? And so how to resolve that with AI is also interesting.
Like, one thing I also wanted to kind of like dive in a bit is like, I mean, with the next, we were kind of like in this space of developer tooling, developer productivity, like, and then like you see the whole AI vibe coding, like all that kind of like hype that goes around AI, right? Like, how does like, why do we even pursue it? Like, how does it fit into our story? How does it fit into, like, developer productivity? One could maybe say, like, yeah, kind of see it, but like, how does it fit in the whole kind of story of NX, and and the value we want to provide to people? Like, why are we in pursuing it, basically?
Yeah, so I think that for if you just vibe in a small app because you want to learn, I don't know, whatever you learn, right? Some framework, or you want to build a small app to manage your diet for your cat or whatever, right? Okay, you don't have to use an X. I don't think an X is super critical for that use case. You can do whatever you want. I think in general, anything that is about productivity or kind of is not really that applicable to that flow because it's really something else, right? So Annex was always about basically optimizing this pipeline. The pipeline starts with developers writing code. And you create code, and then there is second part where you need to verify code and validate it in CI and whatnot, and then merge into main. And then there is the third part where you reflect and optimize. Well, the optimizing this pipeline was always the case for us. If you are a single developer working on a single app and you're submitting by yourself PRs with minimum tests, that pipeline requires no optimization. All right. The first part, just author code as quickly as you can. That's about it. And that's why I think the impact of vibing is so strong for that use case, because there is no optimization required. You just need to author the code. That's it. That is the only part that matters in there. Right? If you're looking at a team of 50 engineers working on the system, not a big team, what you see is a different setup where now they are in the first writing code phase, and then we need to optimize the ability to author code in a way where they collaborate with each other, right? And Annex was always strong in that and saying, oh, you can scale your teams. We say like scale your code, scale your team, right? The org scaling, team scaling was a big part of value proposition where like, oh, if we let you share your code easily and communicate more effectively, remove some of the boundaries and remove all the silos, suddenly you could ship things like, for example, a design system change across many applications within a week, and it would have required you 3 months before or 6 months before, right? That was kind of the value proposition. Is like at certain scale, there is a lot of friction involved with human-to-human interactions. An X part of an X value was always removing this friction, making a structured way you to perform these interactions such that you could be efficient. And the analogy I gave before is that Annex is like traffic laws in a city. Right? If you have a lot of drivers in a city, you have to have traffic laws that you can efficiently interact with each other and drive through the city and stop very quiet and turn blah blah blah. Right? If you're a single developer in a car on the road, okay, you don't need to, like you drive through back and forth. It doesn't matter. Right? So I think that was always very repetitive. What changed now, or is changing? I mean, we always would change because we are like on Twitter or whatever, on Blue Sky, and this thing. Everyone's like, "Oh, I'm just generating this today."
I mean, there's definitely like the AI bubble and type.
Like
the 2% very front, and
like,
then like,
oh, I'm also completing a little bit faster. Like, okay, that's great, right? So there is a big divide there. But what is changing is that the number of team members in your team and the interactions team members have with each other is no longer the bottleneck or the only thing that contributes to this friction and requires scaling. Now you have other aspects. If you're using coding assistants really well, and I think you should because they're pretty cool, right, and very useful. Now the scaling could be, well, I have a bigger app. How does my coding assistant help me change this cross-team stuff efficiently? Right? Because if you have 20 repos and your coding assistant just looks at one of them, well, it's not going to change it efficiently because it's going to only look at one of the repos, right? And so you kind of have like, how do you maximize that utility? To the aspect of organizational scaling went from just being people interacting with people to people interacting with people plus interacting with AI assistants. And AI assistants don't have in some way they're much more powerful because they can scan through more code and make more code changes quicker, especially if it's a small, like a repeatable kind of very reproducible change. But at the same time, they don't talk to other AI assistants from other repos, so they tend to they don't make a lot of assumptions about other repos by default, right? Without special tooling. Therefore, they kind of struggle with that. So that aspect of scaling has changed. And the next, that was always our better proposition, at least a big part of it, is we need to fix that. Okay, we need to let you grow and produce code more efficiently at scale. And that's one part of what we're doing, right? So if you want an X repo and you have all this context in one place, right? We will feed the right part of this context to an LLM that you use to Copilot, whatever you're using, Cursor, etc. such that it knows more about what's going on in the repo, sort of like a map for the city, such that it can navigate more efficiently in the source code and do more interesting things, which matters a lot. That's kind of one of the arguments I make, that context is everything. It's like the famous Alan Kay quote is like, the context is worth 80 IQ points. Context is everything, right? If you have an organization with like 50 repos, and your AI friend is working on one of them, right? It won't be able to make interesting changes across them. It will make change to the repo. Then you have to go and explain how to make an adjustment change in the repos that downstream from it. Right? If you want one place,
I'd like to.
go ahead.
I'd like to elaborate on this one specifically, because like I saw this coming up, right? And we have a blog post. I can maybe link it up later in the chat as well for people to follow up to. But I think that's important to understand, because there's one thing is just using something like Claude Code on, as you said, like on a small code base, right? But then the other thing is like we work with super large enterprises which have like these, call it monorepos, right, with multiple projects in one workspace, etc. And you can already kind of segue into that, talking about like context and stuff. Can we kind of like elaborate kind of why monorepo can be good, right? What can be the problem as well? Because like I saw also people online mentioning, oh, I love my Claude Code and AI, but like it's such a pain working in a monorepo, which is understandable, right? So I'd like to maybe elaborate that, because that's, I think, is important.
That's right. So I think it's in some way it's a similar analogy to why developers could be more productive in a monorepo. But if you look at in the AI assistant, right, what you want from AI assistant, actually it's superpower of the your AI assistant, is that when you ask it to make a change to, say, UI library or some piece of code, right, it can, and if it has all the context, it could look at all the users of your code, take it into account, and it should look, and either talk to like work with you to figure out a solution, just update those users or whatever, right? It should be able to do all the stuff efficiently, and it can if it's in one place, right? That's kind of the biggest tailwind that a monorepo has when it comes to AI, is that aspect, is that in a monorepo, compared to having like 50 separate repos, if it's all in one place, or 10 separate repos compared to be in one place, that when it's in one place, the context is always there, meaning that your AI system sees all the context with the right map that Next provides, right? Is able to kind of figure out what's relevant, consume it, and make much more informed decisions that are like cross-cutting, go cross libraries, cross modules, cross projects, and you can update all the users in a single go in the correct way. The change it's going to suggest is going to be aware of all the users and therefore more correct. And if you don't have it, if you have these 50 repos, it's going to suggest a change that's relevant to a small, like to that particular repo, but because you don't know the users, you don't know whether it matters, right? Like, is it a good change? Like it definitely cannot update all the clients at the same time because it's monorepo. And monorepo it can. So the leverage, like basically monorepos historically had one big disadvantage, really. That is, large-scale changes sometimes are required in a single go on a repo that challenge it. All right, in a monorepo, you can spread it out in a polyrepo. AI makes large-scale code changes that are kind of like simple and reproducible much easier. Like honestly, like 100 times easier, right? It's basically, if you think of your Claude Code as the mightiest refactoring tool, which it could be used as, right? Suddenly, that disadvantage of the monorepo goes away. Monorepo comes with an advantage where you can change a piece of code and all of its clients in a single go, all right? Or you consider all with clients in a single go. So you don't have this published API idea where you need to program defensively. It's like, no,
just everything is kind of linked directly, right? So you see the impact right now, basically, in your PR.
I could see impact right away. I could rename. I don't have to do kind of Yagni stuff and design in advance, because I don't know. Like, I know everyone, and that's a big advantage of an repo. I could make a mistake and fix it in a single PR by updating all 50 clients of my mistake. Right. So now, if that context is available to your AI system, suddenly it can do it, and now you have this huge leverage where you can send this massive PRs, changing like core components libraries, and all its users. You can send many of those per day because it's just so easy. Where that's kind of the main thing where monorepos kind of rock, right?
Yeah, and you can also directly link it. I mean, like that is ultimately, like here I'm, for instance, in Cursor, but you can use VS Code, whatever you prefer, basically. But yeah, the main power is like whenever you make a change, like this is a let's call it monorepo, is like a super small one, right? It has basically one app and a bunch of libraries. But this is like kind of like what your workspace could look like, right? And the main advantage is like whatever you want to, I don't know, reference this specific order component, order file, whatever you need to refactor, you can just like add it to your context, right? It will be right in here, and then say like something like link it to products, grid, whatever, right? And you can kind of
Yeah.
cross-link across these different libraries. And that's
Yeah.
the power, right, that you kind of mentioned, right? The grabbing in of the context very easily. If the product
Yeah.
power would be not a repo, it would basically be impossible, right? You would have an API, you have to run
That's right.
one, but
Yeah,
it's kind of less
that's
immediate.
right. And the important part as well with Annex, you don't have to link a lot of segments. Some of this linking happens, or a lot of it happens automatically, right? Annex will provide the metadata to the assistant to make it happen. But that's kind of fundamental leverage. So but I think in general, what we need to consider for a lot of projects, right, in a fairly short term horizon, but definitely in the midterm horizon, the biggest differentiator between whether they are successful or not would be, or one of the bigger differentiators would be, are they building a way that's kind of AI assistant friendly? As the assistant become more and more capable, you just give more developers more leverage, right? Two teams with 50 engineers, obviously they need to know what to build, etc., and the product. But in terms of actually being able to execute, as someone who is managing your engineering team and an organization, you need to see: do I build it in a way that's help my AI systems to be effective, or in a way that prevents my AI system from being effective? And being the same, or providing context in a single go is definitely AI system friendly, because they could be a lot more effective. You literally could replace in a dozen PRs with a single PR. No matter how capable cloud code is, you have to do it like you will still spend at least days doing it in a poly repo setup, which you can spend in an hour if you're in one place. So that's huge advantage. So what we're working on, though, in addition to this, is kind of the homeowner repo, like we call
What's the
smart repos
downside,
now.
though? What's the downside, though? Then, like,
The downside is
what's
that
the complaint?
there are two complaints. One is that you can say, well, the repo is too big, AI gets confused. Well, that's where Next helps, because we give the AI the map of knowing which parts are relevant to what you're trying to figure out, because we know the map by deriving from the source code, right? We know the project graph and lots of other stuff, right? We know the metadata. So we kind of like fix the downside. The second downside could be, well, CI is slow, which we can talk about kind of a bit later, perhaps, where that is the second thing we historically were addressing, is that the ability of your CI to function a bigger repo, it requires a better tooling. Just naively hacking 3 npm scripts and like be done with it is not just not going to work, right? So those two things are solvable problems, right? So it's so those are like fundamental issues, which is like, oh, like it's the law of physics where CI cannot be fast in a bigger repo. It obviously can. It's more like they require
Help,
proper engineering
basically.
solutions rather than naive solutions, right? It requires some sort of structure in there, right? But they're solvable problems. But what you get, like the poly repo stuff and the whole context stuff, it's much harder to solve without giving this intelligence. We're actually doing it. So we have a feature called Polygraph, right? Which is our ability to connect multiple repos into one. And one of the things we're working on now is the ability for you to consume intelligence across repos. So LLM kind of,
which we just launched yesterday, by the way, right?
Yes.
Like
So there is
Polygraph.
more. Exactly. Polygraph just launched. So yes. If you're interested, please, get in touch. But it basically lets you connect like 50 repos and kind of make one giant space of code. That helps for many reasons, but also helps with AI. So it's cool, but it's still not as effective as being in one repo, just because the quality of interaction, just everything works just so much more immediate, right? So there is more leverage in one place. But if you cannot have one place because you just have 50 repos already and you're not moving them together because like you are in the situation you're in, or like for organizational reasons you want 50 repos, well, that also works. You don't get all the benefits, you get some of them, right? But the meta model is still the same. Get metadata together as if it's one place. Stop treating your repos as independent units of code, right? Because they are not, right? At the moment you're like, and you as developer know they're not, because when you make a change in one repo and release a package, you have to update other repos, so you're aware they're connected. So make that connection clear to your AI assistant, and lots of good things will follow.
And I think the key point there is, as you kind of like hinted, is you need that, like you cannot just like naively, like maybe in a year you can, right? Like just naively let your AI grab throughout the whole repo with all the files and whatever. But that's kind of like tricky, right? Especially as the repo grows. And I think like that's kind of like one key part that we have been talking a lot on YouTube, on our blog, etc. in the recent months. Like it feels like years almost, to be honest. But like what I'm talking about is MCPs, which is basically around since January, right? Roughly February, right? When it really at least like got huge adoption. And so this is what the NX MCP is about. And here, for instance, you can see it configured in Cursor. You can find out how you can set it up on our docs. But that's basically the part that attaches different tools to your workspace that then helps there. It's kind of like the little helper for the monorepo, which NX is for you when you interact over the CLI. And so if you install this one, I just wanted to super quickly show off here in Cursor. Again, it works in all editors, but you can see all these little tools that we kind of expose. And this is basically nothing else. You can imagine it as a bridge from your chat window where the LM sits to an X, which basically, if you ever looked into this one here, there is a project graph JSON file, right? This is where an X kind of collects the data. And so these tools are kind of like a bridge into that, giving the LM that notion into the repo and understanding hey, here's different products, there's domains, there's owners, all these different things, such that the queries get more effective in the end, right?
Yeah, 100%. Anyway, so that's the kind of the authoring of code part. Annex historically helped us. We called organization scaling before, and more about people scaling. That's what organization scaling meant. Yeah. Helping people interact with each other. Now with AI, we just have to help AI to also understand the organizational structure, the whole thing, all the code, not just code in your repo, etc. So that's also the part that we're focusing on, because at some scale, that is one of the bigger differentiators, right? What you need to basically figure out, right? If you're in a bigger repo, in a small repo, it works if you're doing vibing or whatever. The AI don't have to be correct; you just have to be roughly reasonable. It shows you something you're it's pretty good, and you can ask for tweaks.
Yeah, simple file wrapping actually works pretty well there, pretty efficient. You can just have one project repo, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And whatever it generates, it's fine, right? So it doesn't have to match up anything else as closely, because by and large, you're just trying to see either reasonably working and is it impressive, right? And that's that is fine. That is not that's a fine thing when you are doing iteration 0 or when you are a team of 2, whatever, right? If you have a big existing systems, impressive or mostly working is not good enough. It has to match the rest of your system. It has to use the components from the rest of your system. All the things about data access have to be placed with other data access things that because there are lots of other things in there that are there for good reasons, related to security and a lot of other things, right? So you are in a different place altogether where it's no longer good enough to just show something impressive. They'll be oh, I have that's basically what everyone shows. The new to-do list is show me a list of books, a list of movies, a list of video games, and it kind of figures it out. That is fine. This is not the same as an internal banking app, right? Where it's a lot more specific, okay? And the issue there is just figuring out what parts are relevant, so the AI could generate something that's coherent and in alignment with what you have, but also just verifying that what you're generating is correct. When you vibe in, it's so easy because you see what it generates. So your verification is instant human verification, saying it's still low, the button still works. How cool is that? Right?
Yeah, you can trace it.
That's right. When you have an enterprise, that's right. When enterprise system, when you load it, it takes 15 Docker containers and the rest of it for the whole thing to boot, and nothing really works, and the database always falls apart, and the test takes 20 minutes to run. It's you are in a position where you actually, it's very hard for you to verify things, right? And that's another part we're working on, because we actually, as folks probably know, understand how to run everything in your workspace. We atomize your targets, so we know how to run certain small slices of your test case, right? So instead, which we now working on to help with verification part, right? We connect to your terminal, so we can pipe streaming apps, right? Again, should help with verification part, right? The verification is basically another big thing which completely falls apart in a larger repo. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see more struggle, right? When you go inside, it tries something, but then it cannot verify whether it's correct, right? And then you're the developer, okay, you made 500 line change. We have no idea whether it works, right? And the AI has no idea.
Yeah, tests. So I think tests will see a big revival. Whether you write it or not, that's another story. You can actually generate them. Why not? Just capture the current state, basically. Right. But yeah, they will definitely have a revival. I'm pretty sure. But I'd like to come back to that in a second as well. Just here, while we were talking about the context grabbing, I just ran here a super quick query. That says basically nothing let me make this a bit bigger here. Show me all the projects in his workspace, right? And I didn't try it now without our tools, with Dynamics MCP that I showed before. But basically what would happen is in that case, it would just grab the workspace, run the grab command on your file system, list the file tree, try to figure out maybe why the package JSON, what projects there are. Now here, what happened is you can see it makes this call. And for those people that didn't try this yet, this is basically a call to this so-called model context protocol tool, right? Which grabs into this workspace, this project graph that I saw before, right? And so down here, you then see it can give a much more structured answer, right? So it says like here, there's an application in here. There's libraries that are by domain. Here it knows the targets that you can run on this application. It knows like how it is structured. There's an order domain with 7 projects. There's like a products domain with 4 projects, etc. So this is just to show like there is this knowledge present. Now it depends like what I want to do with it, right? So basically, if I now say, hey, generate a new app into the products domain, it would know where without me having to kind of navigate into that folder structure within the repo, right? And so this is some of these things that we mentioned before, where we try to give that context to the AI. It just doesn't just blindly try to figure it out.
That's right. And basically, this is a toy example, but in a real example with like 2,000 projects in it, or like 1,000 projects in it, something like that. That's like a reasonable repo, right? It is much harder to understand. Okay, do I have something similar? Like, should it things like that? What is a good way to do it, right? Because it's much more effective to tell the agent like, oh, I have it over here, and it's basically like this, but with this small change over here, rather than it trying to vibe it from scratch and then the thing is completely off, right? So having an existing version that it can then borrow as a blueprint is very handy, and that definitely helps with that. It's much more effective at figuring out, kind of its way around the workspace, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so for people that want to kind of play around with it a bit, I'm just plugging here shamelessly our blog. We have like a whole series of what we kind of like grouped into making LLM smarter, because that's basically what we try to do, right? Like especially in the monorepo context or larger workspace context.
Right.
And so there's a series of those where we dive into like toy examples, what I showed here, but like in a more actual workspace, right? Like try to generate an app, try to generate a lib, kind of talk about the workspace, try to figure out like what the graph looks like, what products are affected. So definitely dive into those. What I wanted to do a segue into now mostly is because like we already kind of touched on it, is the whole AI story, right? Because as you said, like there's the local development experience, which this is what it is right now, right? So you generate apps, you generate code, we help with that locally. But we also always had the CI part as well.
And
I'm bringing it up mostly because that's what we kind of like pushed out on Monday, with like kind of like whatever healing CI. So can we talk about that, like, and what it is?
I think that in general, that if I mentioned the pain points, and the pain points for monorepos or for bigger repos, I mean, we're talking monorepos, but we're interested in larger structured repos. We call them smart repos. It's smart repos, like bigger ones, right? They like lots of advantages. One of the disadvantages, or like one of the things you need to grapple with, is that if you have 500 people writing code in the same place, and all the stuff needs to be merged into main. Now you have a like sort of a bottleneck. Your merge queue or whatever, like this verification phase becomes a bottleneck, right? You need to make sure that verification is efficient, right? So when I talk to a lot of enterprise clients, they spend more time trying to make their PRs succeed compared to writing PRs. Writing PRs is not a problem, okay? And it's actually the fun part. Everyone loves writing PRs, right? It's like, I write code, it's great. You type in a mechanical keyboard, you feel good, etc., etc. And then you spend like 5 hours, like forcing this PR into happiness, right? Before you can, get into main, right? And like that's the second part is we kind of always try to solve it by just providing a solution for fast CI. We have a solution for fast CI and solution for reliable CI. Historically, we can figure out which tests are flaky, deflake them, we can distribute your builds, we can cache them. So that's already a big part of it. If your tests are not flaky, you need fewer reruns. That's good. If your CI is fast, it's great. Or like more compute efficient. Although you don't need 1 hour, you need 20 minutes to run your CI for like. So that's good. Like lots of good things, right? What we did on Monday is we released a version that you need to opt in now, so it's not on by default for everyone, but you can turn it on in production right now on iOS Cloud. And what it gives you is the ability for us to fix your CI in flight. The in-flight part is cool because in general, I do not like the idea of I send a CI, and this is the frustration that I have with working on interesting things. You push a PR, you come back and like it's red. Why is it red? Oh, some flaky test. You like rerun it. Annoying, right? You just have to remember to come back. Then you spend an hour doing something, come back, it's broken again. Why you like a small error? You didn't update the test correctly. And for bigger repo, that's bigger deal than people imagine. For bigger repos, it takes a long time to run the tests. Or they're not even runnable locally because people don't know how to set up all the Docker containers correctly. Right? Whatever. Things just don't, like lots of reasons for it to be a problem, right? And so you push it to PR and they're like, oh, I forgot to update this playwright test. And now I have to pull it back to local, update it or whatever. Even if I can talk to my agent in a GitHub, can we fix this test? It's still a lot of overhead. right? I still have to come back. It's still so. What we're trying to do is to say, okay, when we're running CI, we know things failed. We know that failed not for flaky reasons because we deflect them, right? We know the failure. We can use AI to fix the failure. And that's what we do. So basically what happens is that once we detect the failure, we know that the failure is legitimate. We're going to provide a fix, and we're going to show you the fix in your editor. And on GitHub as well. You can see it as a comment. But the coolest part, you're like still in VS Code or whatever, or cursor or whatever editor you use, you'll see pop-up saying, yo, there is a fix for your PR. Review it. You will see the yeah, exactly.
You're saying like
It
there's an
will,
issue basically. Yeah, we can try it actually out. Like as because you already kind of explained what was going on.
yeah.
I broke my repo before the live stream, but let's try whether I got it working. But yeah, that basically I'm just trying to simulate that exact flow that you mentioned, right? Where I am on my branch, I create my super fantastic feature. Now, people that have seen my videos, I have shown this type of super silly mistake a couple times already by now. It's just like messing up an import, like the easiest mistake probably that you could make. And so basically, I'm just submitting a PR for that, right? I have already connected this to Nextcloud. So that's what Victor mentioned before. This is connect to an Nextcloud repo. You can do that as well if you're watching and enable that. The only thing is you have to opt in right now. So basically at the organization level, you basically need to enable these AI features. And then at the specific workspace level, like in this case, my AI shop, you need to go into the settings and then have this self-healing CI in here. Right now, this is experimental. So we actually just pushed it out on Monday. We keep refining all this type of stuff. So feedback, highly welcome. Try it out. But basically, this is the prerequisite, right? You need to enable that such that like NXCloud even attempts to run a fix. And then when I create a PR, so let's give this a shot. Submit this to the AI shop here. I'm pushing this up. Let's see whether we get this running. And so here my usual basically GitHub Actions takes over. Now, just for context, my CI YAML file, this is how it looks like. Basically runs NX commands, right? I have here NX agents set up, and so they are automatically running these self-healing workflows. You can also not have, like if you don't use NX agents, you can also enable it this way. So basically, instead of having this line up here, you basically need to give NXCloud an instruction, say, whenever this is run and if this fails, run this check basically and attempt a fix for it, right? This is important. I ran into this as well. Obviously, because like in a normal sequence, if a step before fails, CI will just abort everything.
Right.
And so up here, we see NXCloud starts to kick in. So it saw our run. You see here it starts running. This is like quite a simple repo with just like maybe 10 or 15 projects. So it should be pretty quick. And this one is going to fail. Now, what is interesting specifically, because you mentioned kind of the whole kind of babysitting, right? In the sense of like you get distracted, you do something else, and then like just an hour later, you, oh, well, right, I have this PR, and you go back and maybe it failed right like 5 minutes after you pushed it up, right? So one thing that we did is here with NX Console, you have basically this NX Cloud integration, and you can see here, I pushed up here this feature, and you see it running. Now, you see like it already failed online, and now you see this creating a fix that comes in here. So this is basically online. If I jump back, it already failed. And so if I like kind of look into the actual run out here, I see basically down here, fixing broken tasks. So this is basically an agent that kicks in and tries to apply a fix for this problem. And this is just like, I can also see it locally. The main idea here is you could just not care about this locally, but the idea is you're already in your IDE, you're already working there. So that's where you will get a notification if something is wrong. I will already propose you that fix, right? And so here you can see this running. Now you see the notification kicks in. So this would be if I wouldn't be staring in a real world scenario at this screen here. I just click here and then see the error that comes in here, right? And so if I click show error details, I come in here. You see the fix that AI suggests. Luckily, it figured it out. It wasn't that difficult. But it figured basically out that the import here is wrong, right? This is the provided fix. Now there's a verification step going on here. Can you talk about that one here? Because I think that's
Yeah,
an important
that's
part
right.
as well.
So yeah, the idea that first we are suggesting a fix and we show it to you right away. And verification could be quick, but in some cases it could take a long time, like 10, 15 minutes. And you can sometimes see that, you know what, the fix is correct. It's not going to make anything. You're just applying a commit to your PR. So it's not unsafe to apply it before the verification completes. So a lot of the times you just know, you're like, oh, that's right. Oh, I want to apply it locally. I want to reject, because you just know that like you as a human being know, like I missed it, etc. But if you're not sure, you're like, oh, it appears correct. But let me see. It's going to try to rerun the failed task to make sure they become green. All right. And then that's kind of an extra indication that the fix is probably good. All right. And then you can apply it. The important part here, where what we try to optimize for, right, is to optimize for this latency. Your PR just failed. It actually didn't have to fail. If you have some tests, some other tests could still be running.
Oh, yeah.
But we're already creating a fix on a machine. And we're creating a fix on a machine where some task fails, so everything's stopped correctly. The environment is ready, it's perfect. There is zero downtime between failure and the fix creation. Straight after failure, seconds later, we're creating a fix, right? So you don't have the thing where you have to go back to a comment and then talk to some agent.
And also, like talking about that specifically, like here it was a super simple demo case, right? Like there could be like, since we are running in a monorepo scenario, we're running builds like for 20 projects, 50 projects. So
That's
like
right.
20 of them could fail, right? So fix will be created for all of those, right?
That's right. Exactly. So like it doesn't have to be as even though the trivial cases often are the most annoying when they fail, because you're like, it was almost good, but this one thing. And the idea that there is we're reusing the same CI machine, all right? So in flight, the analogy like when your plane flies and there is another plane that just kind of refuels it while it's in flight, like it's that efficient, right? Or like a Formula One car, right? Where they change tires super quickly, right? Is that the idea is to waste no time. It's not to have another round where you have to go back to Opera like, oh, Mr. Claude, can you help me with this? And Mr. Claude spends 20 minutes booting your machine if you are an enterprise. No, in here, whatever is happening is already running. We just need a little bit of time to figure out the fix suggested. Zero time wasted, right? You see it in the editor right away. So we're like, yo, is this what you want? Right? And you're like, seems good, right? That is kind of the optimizing this flow to make sure that there is, because I think a lot of the AI usage boils down to, because we're all using the same model at the end of the day, right? It boils down to this UX experience, right? Or the UX DX experience, is that how annoying this interaction is and how easy it is, how smooth is it? Do I have to go and figure out how to talk to someone? Or is it just saying there was an error, very common use case, we have a fix, yes or no, right, sort of thing. So we're trying to make the UX, and there is still more work to be done. We just released on Monday, but we're trying to make the UX very clear. So it's like you as a developer just need to say, that looks good, right? So like that's it. You don't need to think about anything. You just need to quickly glance and say, oh yeah, the build fixed now. The code change makes sense. Apply, and when you apply, the commit
so
will be
this
sent
is basically the
automatically.
area I'm basically focusing on. So I have basically the idea is also have all the context locally right now, right? You have the error that happened on CI. This is the log. There's the fix, the verification step happening here, and as you said, this is like optional. Like if you already look at it, oh yeah, it's good, right? Don't even have to run all the other tests, whatever, and verify. Just apply, right? So these buttons are already enabled. You can just apply, go ahead, and like done.
That's right. That's right. That's kind of the magical part in here, that is the low friction part, and there is no downtime. So yes, like the fix, takes a little bit more time, but not all time to create. It's just kind of like your CI right after it's fixed on the spot. You don't need to remember to come back and address it. It's addressed right there, right? So we think it's a big deal, because we in general believe in this. Our task, right, is to help developers be more like to ship more code, right? And a big part of what we're doing, especially on the Cloud side, it's helping you sort of increase the bandwidth of how much code you can push into main, right? Because everyone is focused right now, oh, we can generate a lot more code. For bigger projects, the issue oftentimes is not generating code, it's trying to force it into main. So like you have this merge queue that things fail, things are unreliable, every second build is flaky, there are small issues here and there. You have to like attend to a PR many times before it becomes green and even it's appropriate for code review or should be merged or whatever, right? That part is important, because if you generate 3 times as many PRs, right? But your ability to throughput of your ability to merge PRs doesn't increase, you're just generating noise. It's going to be dead code, basically, right? So you want to increase that ability such that the number of PRs goes up because you are able to generate more PRs. You're able to deliver them to main in a reasonable amount of time, right? And the analogy here we used is the analogy of bandwidth, right? Where back in the day when you were, when I was much younger, I used like a modem. And if I want to watch a movie, I would start downloading the movie, take a long time, and I would come back and see how's my movie going or
Hope
whatever.
it buffers in the meantime.
That's right. And I would, I would download movies through like different,
Yeah.
torrent, which I'm not saying you should be doing, but it was back in the day. It was different times, right? And it took a long time, right? And the issue for me wasn't the presence of or lack of movies. Adding more movies on the other side would be helpful to me. The issue I had is particularly bandwidth, right? I need to be able to consume more movie per second, right? So it's here, like what we're trying to do with our when it's cloud, our paid product is primarily focus on your ability to decrease time to gain. You set a PR. We want to, as quickly as possible, in the most compute efficient way, verify it's correct, deflake it, fix it if you miss something, such that you have a green, good to merge PR, ideally in a single go. All right, that's kind of the what the value proposition is, right?
And that bandwidth, like or that traffic, let's say, to talk like in the same pattern, like the metaphor, is increasing dramatically, right? If like at least the sayings on Twitter are true that everyone is running at least 10 agents in parallel that work for you as like your assistant and push PRs up on TI.
And in some ways it gets worse because what AI agents, the good part about them, that let you make small code changes to separate PRs, right? Because you can now partition work. Like as a human being, you're working on something else and you sneak in a few improvements here and there accidentally, right? So there's just a few because it's just pain in the bum to run a separate PR, so you kind of figure you batch it, right? With AI agents, there is no reason to batch it. It's actually much better for AI agents to do it in a non-batch way because it's just easier to explain an agent. Just do this one thing, right? This one thing and 5 other things on the side, right? So now you can, I'm not saying you're going to have 3 times as many lines of code changed, but you can easily have 3 times as many PRs because you just chunk your changes into many more PRs now. All right?
Which will increase traffic and which will run into the same bottleneck.
That's right. That drastically, like it's basically saying that we used to drive with 4 people in the car and now everyone has their own car. There's a lot more traffic, right? Yeah. We mix metaphors. It's like it's traffic.
Car sharing is like normally the good thing. Like it shouldn't.
Yes, exactly. So, but that's the important part in here is that it's like that problem is already acute for a lot of large organizations. You talk to them, they all roll their eyes saying, "Oh, it takes days for us to like land the PR, right, etc." And it's already acute. It's going to be a lot more acute. So they need to run CI fastly, efficiently, reliably, and now with self-healing, right? I think would be more and more.
Yeah. To come back to our example of lowering the friction, like basically to conclude this round trip here, all I would have to do is kind of click apply fix. What does apply fix locally do? Like what is it?
Okay, so currently the interaction we have, and we're going to refine and have like there's a lot of work in progress because we dog food everything. Whatever we don't food and not dog food ends up being not very good. So that's kind of the part. So we're really trying to put things because the quality is significantly higher when we can see it because you can actually feel what it feels, right? Is that sometimes the fix is just perfect and you like apply fix. Sometimes the fix is almost perfect. And honestly, even that is already helpful because instead of you starting from scratch and trying to figure out like what it exactly you're like, oh yeah, it's almost right. You forgot this one thing. Sort of.
Oh, so you apply it locally. You have a new workspace down here. And just
and you can tweak it around, right, and then push it. The changes we need to consider realistically is to say maybe we should consider work trees and other stuff where you can do it in a more dev containers so you can apply
stuff like that.
That's right. So, like there are other things like that. Currently, it's like kind of the first iteration of apply locally is like it just applies to a branch and you can tweak it and push it, right? That lets you kind of start not from zero. The one of the best parts about AI that I think that at least for the work I do is almost never correct in terms of building the whole feature, but it builds something so I don't start from zero. And I was like, okay, the layout is roughly right, and I can go and then I can kind of polish it a little bit and make it into what exactly I want so it matches with the rest of the system, right? And that's the same with apply locally. You don't have to be like, well, that's a weird error, but like it does it. You're like, oh yeah, that's right. I just it missed one small thing.
Perfect. Yeah, and basically this apply fix is here in my NX console view in my cursor or VS Code. I just like super quickly jumped over to the PR because maybe you're no more in your IE, right? You just happen to go and check your open PRs. it also shows up here directly in the Nxcloud comment. So we see it down here. There's the failed one, and below there's like the suggestion of the fix, which clicking here will bring me over to Nxcloud again and show the fix in line. So this is basically the diff that you have, as you could apply here as well if it's good enough.
That's right.
So let me just click the one here. You see Nxcloud applies fix successfully. Now if I go back to the PR down here and refresh it, you will see now there's 2 commits, right? And here you see the commit that got pushed in by the auto self-healing CI part, right? Now here for the commit message, like we saw before, now I closed the window here. Right now, the commit message is like fixed. Like that's some of the refinements, right? That we're currently working.
That's right.
Well, that you can just like tweak the commit message, stuff like that, which is makes sense, right? To have it there. Cool. Continuing the AI week, the second one that we actually just pushed out today on our blog again. Let me just hop over. I'd like to talk a bit about that with you there as well. Like we called it here, like querying your CI with NXMCP. As always, there's a video at the top you can check out as well if you want to dig deeper. What is this all about? Like, what do we do here?
So that's one of the things that. I mean, I think that's I think that so far, like the fixed CI is kind of boots on the ground, and I think that everyone in organization should be as boots on the ground as possible. I write a lot of code, and I write some code, and I push to the CI, and I build real features, not just POCs, because you just feel differently, so it's useful. So that's one boots on the ground. Every engineer should enjoy CI fixing in the same way every engineer should enjoy fast CI or reliable CI, right? This part is a bit different, and it's the third part of this pipeline. Remember, there's writing code, there is verifying code, basically the ability to merge stuff in the main. And then there is a reflection, because you merge stuff in the main, things are happening, but then you need to, for example, figure out like why, like how to make things better. Like any platform engineer we interact with, or every senior engineer we interact with, so our task with this, I have to look at their repo there, or like multiple repos, and reflect and see what could be done better, why the regressing or whatever, right? And there are many aspects of that. Like one could be, okay, things appear to be getting slower. Why is that? Can you but that's a question you want to answer. Or things appear to be failing more. What are common types of failures? Like what is failing? Can I do a few things in the code base to bring stability up a little bit, right? And that's what we try to do in here, because in general, we are learning a lot more analytics features to Nxcloud. We can examine it, charts and stuff. But I've been much more. I've been very enthusiastic about using Claude for those things, even though Claude is questionable as a statistician. So you need to kind of check twice.
Well, right? That's in general, I feel right now.
It's that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Especially when you have these large amounts of data, you're like, is it correct? Kind of can be probably, but like it's not like
it doesn't look correct. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not correct. You're like, thank you very much. But in general, there is a lot of utility in there, especially not for statistical stuff, but for like pattern matching. Utility a lot more. Like if you're saying things tend to fail, what are common sources of failures? All right, and what you would do as a human being. All right, and that's my approach towards a lot of NLM. Is like, what would I do as a human being if only I was 100 times faster? All right, what would be my approach to it? And my approach to it would be, I would go to my CI executions in the cloud. I would find all the failures. I would open all the failures. I would open all the failed tasks. I would get the output of every failed task, and I would see is there anything common. I would categorize them in some way, right? And I would find something that's common. Right? That would be that's how I would do it as a human being. Turns out, Claude and other and LLMs in general could do the same. All right, they could go, like if you help them enough, right? And that's what this is about. Is we are giving you this information such that you can wire it up into a Claude desktop or a cursor, because you could honestly ask questions in your cursor the same way, saying, what tends to fail in my CI in the last month? So there was these 5 things, and you can say, but you'll see on cursor saying like, can you fix it? All right, or can you pick point number 1 and suggest ideas how to address it, given I'm in my code base now?
Break it down, basically.
Tell me what to do.
Directly into your code base, because you're in.
That's right, right? Yeah. So in this case, you remove this. I'm a human being looks at it, creating this analysis, copying in a Google Doc, doing some deep thinking, then arriving at a problem, then I go into Claude. I'm going straight, like, talk to Cloud, get the relevant information, categorize them, give me common source of errors. Let's examine one error at a time and create a detailed plan while I'm in a code base on how to address it. I think that's kind of the use case we try to address with this, which is enabling you to do more kind of high level kind of view of what is going on, what needs to happen with your CI, so
especially
it's effective, right?
customized view as well, right? Because like one
Yeah.
thing is because like here I just like happened to open. Let me actually switch here the theme just to make it a bit more light. Now everyone is blind. But basically, this is the NX Cloud workspace for NX itself. Like I tend to use that one to just like show people more data. This is probably the biggest one that we have that is public. It is small compared to what we have. Like when we
Yeah,
talk to
that's right.
clients, it's like super small. But if you want to check this out for those that are viewing, like you can just like go to NX/NX Cloud, and there's a live demo which will directly bring you into the workspace, which we are using. Basically, that's the dog fooding you mentioned before. This is our workspace for developing NX, right? Which is the open source part. And so here you see already some analytics at the top, which is like at a quick glance, what's my cache hit rate, stuff like that. But there's already a tab as well for those that don't know that shows some rough analytics, right?
All right.
If I go in here, you see the runs, you see the pipeline executions, you see probably the most impressive one is always the time saved, where it's kind of like see like how much time you actually save. But like these are just some initial ones that we pushed out. What you mentioned right now is like how you can plug this into something like this is Cloud Code, right?
Yeah.
Where you cannot just like, hey, pull down all the different like data, like look at the different data, put it down on your
All right.
own, like try to figure it out. But you can actually say like, I'm here. This is one I ran, which I also showed in some of the videos. So we don't have to kind of go through this live. But basically, I'm just in natural language saying use NX Cloud and extract all the CI pipeline executes for the last 20 days. Just like to fetch data into my context of this conversation. And you see here, it invokes these tools, pulls things together, and then it kind of creates a small kind of report for me almost, right? Where it just breaks things down. Because like I didn't really ask any specific question. It's like, give me all the runs, right? And so I get a good overview. And I think that's kind of like what you mentioned also. The powerful part is like now I can look at this and then dig deeper, right? Oh, there's like 19% failing, right? Like, why is that, right? And then start asking subsequent questions like, show me all the failed runs. Why do they fail? Are there patterns, right? Kind of like elaborate data for your own specific purpose or things that you want to.
Yeah, exactly. I honestly think that whereas Savkin CI is unique to us, I think, as because we have this interesting CI thing in flight, we partition, we can look at individual tasks very efficiently. It's like we have, it just fits very nicely into what we do. Providing analytics via LLM, I think, should be a norm because a lot of the time that's what I want to do.
I mean, I think in general, the whole space is going towards interacting via an LLM rather than just like clicking through websites, right? So it could actually become quite a new paradigm. How you interact
because
with software.
exactly, because the beautiful part about it, then now I can connect my cloud stats to some other stats, and I could like connect linear, connect cloud, and I could do cross tool examination, right, and kind of merge these data sets together. There are a lot more interesting things you can do in there. Whether it perfectly works right now, that's a separate point. I think in terms of like there may be some work to be done on here and there on LLM front to make certain things more predictable. I think LLM in general is a much better doctor compared to a statistician or an accountant. It's much better at figuring out patterns and seeing something that like, oh, it looks like this, and being kind of pattern matching rather than looking at tens of thousands of rows and be like, you know what, let me chart you some charts, because some of the times those charts are not that great. So like, but the important part is that it's a very useful way to consume stuff, especially if you are someone who looks at the bigger picture. You're trying to figure out, okay, what is going on, like why are certain things slower, right? Or why certain things more error prone? How do I make my CI more like, if you are platform engineer tasks with overall improving the quality of your ability to deliver, right? That is a big deal, right? So we are definitely using it in our POVs from that point on, right? Because we often do like 2-week POVs with clients. We show something, show the value, whatever, right? And here we're like, Claude, did we achieve the value? It's like, Claude or something. I don't know. So I like this idea because I think that's a perfect use case for an LLM, where you just feed a lot of data and just trying to create a mental model of what to look in more deeply, right? You can exit Claude and then just go and look at deeply by hand, right? If you want to. But
I think that right now is the biggest value, right? So just like spot there's a problem there. You uncover that, and then you go look at actual stuff, right? Like look at the CI runs. Does it kind of like match what Claude tells you? And then you kind of like dig deeper on your own. I think that's the biggest, at least right now. I mean, when I played around with the feature, trying it out, like like a bunch of times, like you get like, oh, this is like the percentage of how much this specific feature failed. And then you're like, oh, this looks suspicious, right? And you try to ask again. And as we all know, it's like, oh, you're exactly right, right? It is actually not failing as much. It's just because you use it in all the pipelines.
That's right.
Obviously, the amounts to more failures. So you should definitely kind of take this still, at the moment at least, like with a grain of salt. But supposedly things get better from
the utility is there. I personally found several insights where like, okay, that's a legitimate thing I didn't consider because I just didn't look at enough data. It looked at all the data, it gave me some insight, and now I can make things better. So it works. It definitely works. So I'm excited to see where it goes as well, because I think there's a lot of potential in making this more useful. But even as it is right now, it's already pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. So we're almost at the hour. Couple of things that I wanted to plug as well. So for this specific querying your CI, go to our blog. That's probably the best one where you can find all the info. So nx.dev/blog. We usually, whenever we post content, if there's a video, we will link it, embed it in here as well. So you can kind of find all the for those that like the visual walkthroughs. Apparently it's a thing on YouTube to have your face on the thumbnails.
That's okay.
If it comes to installation for because we didn't really dive into this one such that you can try it out, there's always a getting started in those blog posts as well, right? So for now, in Claude, you can kind of directly edit the MCP settings, which is basically editing a JSON file. Claude now supports direct integrations as well, so remote MCPs, which we're working on. So going forward, like new releases that come out, you will be able to directly connect it to like your NX Cloud workspace from within like any MCP compatible client, basically. Another thing that I wanted to highlight is also if you just want to follow up with all the AI stuff that we're doing right now, because like this week we just published the latest that we were working on basically last week and the week before, how things evolve and with the speed they evolve. Here is like all the things that we have pushed out, right? We categorize them kind of like what we talked through today, like the coding part, then there's the whole CI part of it, and then there's the whole scaling the organization part of it, right? And so there's the videos, there's links. We will obviously update this page as we keep going. It's a very easy to remember one as well. So nx.dev/AI. Cool. And for those watching on YouTube, as always, like and subscribe. That's how you make sure you don't miss like future videos that we push out. And yeah, we're pretty much at the end. Anything you want to mention to close up or wrap this up?
No, I think that's about it. I think that what the sentiment overall, I would like to say that what I think the industry will move towards is that we have to consider agentic interactions as first class citizen, right? And I think a lot of what we are doing now is to say that we didn't talk about the CLI changes, with TUI and the rest of it, but a lot of the stuff right now is kind of agent or model first, or like we consider in a way mobile first is a thing in design, right? We make sure it works on the phone first, right? And the same stuff here. So a lot of stuff of what we do is in that vein. So we didn't talk about most of it because most of it should not be even visible to you. You run some of the things in terminal, somehow the agent just sees it, sort of thing, right? So those things you shouldn't even see it as a feature. It should just work. And I think like at some time, like maybe 3 months from now, 6 months from a year from now, that just would be the standard, all right? So I think we may be a little bit ahead of some other projects at figuring it out how to fit in to make sure that you don't lose anything when you use agents, right? Anyway, so check stuff out. Let us know what works, what doesn't. What you like, what you don't like, and we can fix it because this whole thing moves so fast, right? We need a lot of feedback to make sure.
I was exactly jumping into that one. Like, definitely try it out. Like as you said, also with the self-healing stuff, there's a lot of tweaking going on. Obviously, like how we formulate the prompt, what works, what doesn't work. And like we obviously dogfood it. We work together with our clients as well. But try it out. Right? Reach out to us. There's different points where you can just like reach out to us by the contact link. You can ping us on socials. There's also the Discord that you can see in here with like the office hours that we have every week. So that's a great opportunity to just chime in and ask questions and dig further into this stuff. We would love to hear about that so we can make it better. All right. Let's wrap this up then. Thanks everyone for chiming in.
Yeah. Thanks so much, folks. Bye-bye.